in these paranormal adventures, okay, like getting to be able to see one of these shadow figures, it's extremely rare. It's even rarer to be able to capture it on camera. But they have this unique coloration to them that it's like it's almost black, but at the same time, it's like the blackest black you will ever see. It's like one of those colors that it's so hard to describe. And so ever since then, I've been trying to find a way to be able to convey that to other people and show them that these things are actually out there.
So what you're describing, I've heard countless times, right? Yeah. And a lot of times people say in a dark room, it's blacker than the black in the room.
Yeah.
So the way I think of it is almost like I try to think of the blackest I can think of, like, there's a lot of black in this room. Like these cameras are real deep black, but then it's like just something that's so much darker than that. And it's hard to imagine.
Yeah.
And so for somebody who's seen this stuff, I can imagine it's hard to convey that. But I've heard that a lot.
Yeah.
I've heard that a lot.
Yeah.
So you had these experiences in the house kind of catapulted you into all this.
Yeah.
And you started doing paranormal investigations and stuff like that.
Right.
What was the response of your wife when you're like, hey, you know that scary stuff we had happen in the house? Yeah. I think we're going to start hunting that stuff.
Yeah. So she is kind of one of those people that's interested in it. For sure. Like if she gets so excited when I actually capture something on camera, and she's like really like supportive and like, that is so cool, but at the same time, she's like, we have a rule. She's like, you are not to bring anything into our home. She's like, the day that you do is the day that this stops.
Oh.
So I got to be very careful about how I do things. And then if I do bring something home, I got to be quiet about it,
Yeah. No, dear, I didn't come across any red demons out there. I don't know what you're seeing.
Yeah, because I actually have brought something home before.
Really?
Yeah, man. It was so I was investigating this house that used to be a candy factory.
Okay.
And the couple had moved from New York, and they were like, oh, this is, so cool. It's an old candy factory, in East Tennessee. But so you got to remember, it is East Tennessee, and it was a factory. So there was some bad things that happened there. So I had been investigating this house for probably, I don't know, I guess it was about a week at this point. And I had made connection to what I had thought was a little boy. And we had come to find out that there had been a little boy that had lived in the house that had been, I can't remember the details of it right offhand, but he had been killed somewhere on the property. And so it was while I was investigating, it was a very kind of personal experience. It was very, it wasn't like threatening or anything like that. Like I wasn't scared or intimidated by this situation. But I had gone home and I had laid down to go to sleep, and I started, and to this day, I feel like it was a dream, but I don't know what it was. I was laying in bed and I look over and I see this little boy, and he's wearing this blue kind of, or it wasn't blue. It was this, it was like a blue and yellow kind of like flannel shirt. And I was looking at him, and he was standing next to my bed. And I remember staring at him, and and he was like he was talking to me, but I couldn't hear what he was saying. And I at that point, I kind of got up and I sat up on the corner of my bed, and I was like leaning over. You know, if somebody's trying to like whisper to you, you like lean towards them. And he had taken he raised his hand up and he took his finger and he put it in the center of my chest, like, and then I woke up. Okay, so at that point, I'm like, that was a weird dream. You know, I go back to sleep, don't really think anything of it. Get up the next morning and I go to the bathroom to take a shower. I take my shirt off and I'm looking at myself in the shower, in the mirror, and there is a burned fingerprint in the center of my chest. Like I can send you the picture of it, and it is. And I mean, it's
just make sure it's from the waist up.
Oh yeah, that's for my OnlyFans. I'm just kidding. So it was. I mean, it was. It's the shape of a fingerprint. Like it's a burn mark that stayed there for like several days. And at that point, then I had started having some weird things happening around the house. And this is when I developed, it really kind of drove me to figure out how to handle this situation. Because yes, you're going out and you're paranormal investigating. That's awesome. It's fun, you know, but there needs to be a stopping point to that. You know, like we were saying beforehand, before this interview, we were talking about, you know, how we kind of never quit. So I needed to find out how to deal with the situation to not allow these things to be in my house and not allow them to follow me around or to bother my family. And so I developed, I don't want to say it's like it's not a ritual, but you know, it's this process now that I do every time I go on an investigation to kind of break apart, to not allow these things to enter my home. So yeah, the outside of my house though is it's kind of scary. So yeah.
Yeah. So is it scary because things happen out there because it's like almost like their domain kind of thing?
Yeah.
All right. Before you go any further, all right. So do you know who Scott Carpenter is?
Yeah.
So he was in here, I'd say 3 months ago or something. We recorded a show. And he was telling me about all the creatures that are in this area.
Yeah.
And he told me, when I told him where I lived, he's like, "Oh yeah, you got him out there."
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, you know, and it, you know, I figured I did, and it doesn't really, I don't think about it though, you know?
Right.
And so last night I had a brass meeting of Merkle Media. We had all the meeting of the minds, and before that was at 9:00. And so usually around 9:00, my chickens are just starting to mosey in right now to the coop. And I lost a chicken last week, and I've been staking out my coop, waiting to see what comes back in, because it must have happened right before they went in, because that night I had gone out and there was a chicken that had got locked out because I got one of those automatic doors. And so I put her in, and then when I came out the evening the next day is when I saw all the feathers everywhere. My wife said that she saw feathers earlier in the day and she just didn't think of it. And I found the body in the corner and it was eaten up. I think it was a possum. But so I've been staking out the chicken coop, trying to see what's coming in. And last night, because I had this meeting, I couldn't be out there at that time. So I went down beforehand, probably about 8:45, and I started up a fire to try to maybe deter anything while I wasn't watching. And I went over to the coop, and all the birds were already in. And I was like, that's kind of, they usually got a good 30, 45 minutes yet.
Yeah.
And I go in and I check the coop. Yep, they're all in there. And as I start leaving and get by the fire, I thought I heard footsteps in the woods. And I wasn't sure if it was bipedal. I wasn't even really thinking that much of it because there's animals around, whatever. Like I always have a gun on me. I'm like, whatever, it's fine. And then I heard what sounded like a pretty large stick snap from the weight of something walking. And I my head jerked up and I look in the woods. My eyes must have gotten real big. And I take the flashlight out then and I start shining in the woods and I see nothing. And I'm just like, okay. So the whole way back to my house, my chickens are a little further from the house than they should be. But I walk backwards the whole time.
Yeah.
And but it got me thinking last night about how Scott Carpenter says they'll come into your property and he has, I forget what he said. All he does, but he has things that basically puts up spiritual boundaries around his property that they come up to it, but they don't cross over it. So what's going on outside your house that you're talking about?
Well, see, so that's the thing. And with doing this stuff, I'm a very technical person and I'm a very rational person. I know it doesn't really fit well with being a paranormal investigator, but I personally believe that, you know, our understanding of our existence on this planet is almost non-existent. Even with how advanced our technologies are, how, you know, the amazing things that humankind has been able to accomplish at this point, I don't think that we're even close. So I think that there is a connection there between these, and really the best way to describe it is different dimensions for us to be able to wrap our heads around. You know, so with the paranormal, like on the ghost kind of side of it, and we'll get into the cryptid stuff a little bit later, but on the ghost side of it, I believe that we have the ability to set boundaries, you know, whether it is that could possibly, me personally, I believe that it's our faith in God that allows us to set these boundaries. But on either side of the spectrum, or maybe it's just our, you know, our physical existence that allows us to have this power, you know, to be able to set these boundaries and to prevent these things from entering kind of our personal space. Because, you know, with it and it's worked. Like I've been, and you sound like a crazy person doing it.
No, man, you're in the right house for crazy.
But I mean, when you're, you know, if you have a ghost in your house or whatever it is, by setting those boundaries, by saying you are not allowed to enter past such and such area, you know, they tend to accept that and they will stay, you know, on those boundaries. And when this kind of first happened to me, it was really bothering me because, you know, I was going out on these investigations and these things, you know, were following me, that I felt like they were following me because, you know, things would move in my house. Like I would, you know, hear, you know, talking, you would hear footsteps, like, you know, I mean, and I was capturing it on camera. So it wasn't just like I was crazy. Like, I mean, this stuff was actually happening. You know, the light switches turning on and off, like recorded it on camera. Like it wasn't like it was a debate on whether or not this was actually happening. So once I was able to set those boundaries, it really, it stopped inside of the house and I wasn't bothered anymore. Now on the outside of my house, it's a little bit of a different experience. So one night Stephanie and I were sitting on our back porch and the kids weren't there and we were just kind of having a little, you know, little bit of a date night. And there was I had been working on the floors in my house. So there is this tool, I can't think of the name of it, but it's you use it to pull up hardwood floors. It's like a long black piece of steel.
Crowbar.
It's kind of like a crowbar. Yeah. So Stephanie was sitting near the railing. This thing was sitting flat on a table and had been sitting on this table for, I have a hard time with putting tools away sometimes, tools that I don't use all the time, you know.
Yeah.
It had been sitting flat on this table for, you know, more than a week. And Stephanie's sitting there talking to me, and all of a sudden we hear this woman's voice, and like we both hear it, and we're like, who is talking, you know? And then all of a sudden this metal bar comes flying over Stephanie's shoulder and hits me in the leg. Yeah. Like at that point, Stephanie's like, you're dealing with this. I'm going back inside. So she goes back inside. So I'm sitting out there.
There goes date night.
Yeah. I'm sitting out there, you know, with my digital recorder and my EMF detector, and I'm trying to figure out, you know, who this person is, what's going on. And I was eventually able to kind of break it down to there was a woman that had been in a car accident in the 1950s that had left this tavern that used to be like right up the road from me. And, you know, she had died there. And basically, she was just, and that's another side of it, is that when you start recognizing this stuff and trying to communicate it with these entities, individuals, you know, whatever it may be, they communicate back and they will kind of search you out. So, you know, that's another important part of being in the paranormal, and kind of looking at it. You'll see guys like Scott Carpenter that are actually able to go out and capture this amazing footage and have these amazing interactions. But it's a way that they, I don't know, maybe recognize us, that we are actually looking, you know, for them, and they, you know, will reach out and show their existence.